So who knows about blockchain? Who has Bitcoin? Who? Oh boy. Oh, now who has Ether? Who knows what a smart contract is? Who doesn't know anything and just really beginner? Nobody is a beginner. So what do you want to learn? I mean, I like to do the basics because people really don't understand what blockchain is, to be honest. So should I do that for 10 minutes, or do you guys all want to have specific questions that you want answered? Who has a specific, what the most amazing thing you could learn if you could learn it today, you know what it is? Anybody? No. Okay, I'll do some blockchain basics, but I don't want you to be bored. But it's kind of important. So the concept of a blockchain is that it's a shared ledger. And when we share ledgers, interesting things happen. So right now, whenever you make a purchase, you're doing it through your payment system, and then they get kind of a message at their system, and they go through their paperwork on their back end, and sometime later the banks reconcile, and ultimately everybody keeps his own ledger. And that sounds like a small thing, but it's a huge thing. When you pay your taxes, you kind of compute everything you think you've made, and then you send a message to the government, and then they check with their ledger and reconcile. And again, we're reconciling all the time, and it's not only wasteful, it's inaccurate. Usually the government often says, no, you didn't make as much as you said you made. You made this much. Well, how do you know? Well, because we have a different ledger, so we're going to tell you how it really was. In other words, there are two sources of truth, right? One of which is often wrong. And so if we could do a magic trick and merge those ledgers to one, then anytime I make any money, the government uses the same ledger so they can see it. And my trading partners use the same ledger so that the sale is the settlement. It's done. There's no, we'll bill you later, we'll send you an invoice, and then you'll pay it, and then that didn't work, and then okay, we'll pay it again. None of that. It just goes because it's a real-time information economy rather than a batch information economy. Does this make sense? This hasn't really been done before. Mostly, if you're trading stocks, some people are day trading. Some people, they buy a stock for 1 minute and then they sell it a minute later. But it takes 2 days to settle that trade in the ledgers because of the antiquated systems we have that are based on the old paper ways of moving information around. So we have a new way of moving information around, and we do it by sharing ledgers. Now, you can imagine if we share ledgers, I say, well, we're going to share ledgers, but we're going to share mine. It's the one on my computer that we're going to share, and you can look in and we'll share a bit, and I'll be in control of the truth. We'll use my computer to say what the truth is. Well, you might not go for that, right? So we share a ledger that is run by a group of anonymous people running computers around the world. And in fact, that ledger is duplicated on every one of about 10,000 computers around the world. Nobody really knows who owns it. It's impossible to sort of say what the ownership of it is. But we trust it because it's designed as a game to be played by all these computers that ends up in trust. Because of the rules of the game, we can trust this network. It's like a mesh network. It's 10,000 computers, it really is, for blockchain, for Bitcoin. And if you wipe out 99% of them, any one of them can reconstitute the network and start it all back up because they all have the same ledger. So this is different because nobody really owns it. It's between us, it's among us, it's everywhere in the world. It doesn't have a location. And we trust it because the game keeps it going and keeps it accurate. And in fact, you've probably heard about hacks of exchanges and lots of Bitcoin lost, and it's been terrible, but never the blockchain itself has never been really hacked. Never has anybody lost money from the blockchain, only when they trusted their private keys to someone else. So let's see how that works. So on the blockchain, you need a wallet. Who knows what a wallet is? What's a wallet?
A wallet is a storage of private keys.
A wallet is an address and its associated private key. So here is a public and private key. This is the wallet, technically, is sort of here. This is the public key. I give this to anybody. It's like giving you my bank account number. It's just that if you can move money into my bank account, but you can't move it out. I do that with my password and other things. And this is kind of the password here. It's always longer than the address. This you don't give to anybody. And this is the same as this. This you keep so that if anybody sends you Bitcoin here, you are the one who can move it to someone else later. Right? That's all a wallet is. You could actually write this down by hand on paper, and that's a wallet. Because you give this to someone else, and they can send you Bitcoin there. And Bitcoin had no value at the beginning, but now it's because of scarcity, more and more people want it, so now it's worth about $4,000, yeah.
Was that your wallet address? Should I
No, obviously. Just you can make these easily. There's on this website, actually I don't remember what it's called, bitcoinwallet.com or something. There's 100 of them. You just make one easily, okay? These are just essentially random numbers that have prime numbers involved, but there are an infinite number of them essentially, and there's no chance that you're going to make this up. If I give you that, there's no way for you to make this up to figure that out. It would take all the computing power on Earth, far more than trillions of years, to be able to figure that out, given this. So this is a blockchain. A blockchain has, this is a block. Here's a block, and it has 1,500 transactions on it for about $23 million. This is an old one, actually. And the last block is here because they're connected by the numbers of blocks, so that's what makes it a chain. The previous block is here, the next block is here. That's what makes it a chain. And inside the block are all the transactions. This is from this address to this address to this address. I will send 320. It's the Bitcoin blockchain, so we don't need BTC. The blockchain knows that it's BTC. That's the only thing you can hear. And you know, here, what's this? What's this? This is the same address again. See it? It says this is the change back. Here's your change back. So I sent 320, and this is what's left. This is the balance in that account. Okay? Here is a transaction. This is a transaction, and this is the sender, and these are two different receivers. And one of them gets $2,000 and one of them gets $2,500. This is in dollars, this is in BTC. I changed it myself. The actual blockchain only has BTC on it. And sometimes you can have many transactions going to a single address as you would for an exchange, for example. And some of these transactions get pretty big. Here's a transaction of many addresses to one for $1.2 million. And this particular address has received over time, you can see over 2 billion, total received over $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. Of course, at the early days in this address, it wasn't worth that much. But at the time I took this snapshot, it was worth that much over time. So a blockchain is a shared ledger that everyone trusts to be accurate forever. Notice that I do not say about the blocks and the chains. They don't matter. You can forget about the blocks and the chains. People always want me to explain how it really works, but you don't need to know how your car works to drive it, do you? So you can forget about it. In 10 years, we probably won't have blocks and chains. The blocks and chains don't matter. This is what matters. A blockchain is a shared ledger that everyone trusts to be accurate forever. Period. That's it. We have other kinds of blockchains already that aren't blocks and chains. That's fine. It's still a shared ledger that everyone trusts to be accurate forever. Now, smart contracts, is this valuable? Or does everybody know this? Good, it's good, all right. So smart contracts, you know, this is a contract when you want to buy something and you push buy now. That's a contract, right? If you don't get the thing, then how do you find out what you have, what your rights are? You have to look under the terms of use of the website. It's legal writing. And then we interpret that in the court to see what your rights are. If the company never sends you something, you have a right to the something because you've sent them your money. So there's a contract in effect, but it's the written words that say what the terms of the contract are. In a smart contract, all of the terms are in code. And so here's an example of a smart contract for flight insurance. How does it work? Well, you pick the day and the time, and it finds the flight. Okay, here's the flight on that day from this city to that city on that time. And then you can, from your wallet, and this is a wallet that hooks up to a browser. This is a wallet plugin for a browser. You can say how much money you want to bet, essentially. That's what insurance is. You can say, oh, well, I'll bet 1 ether that the flight is late, because then if it's so the rule here is that if the flight is more than 45 minutes late, you get 10 times your money back. It's written into the contract. And if the flight is canceled, you get 25 times your money back if your flight is canceled. That's a form of insurance, right? So you would pay a premium, but you would have a big win if your flight is more than 45 minutes late. That 45 minutes late figure comes from what we call an authoritative source. Comes from the airline, not the airline itself, but the industry data that's streaming out of the airport all the time. So if it's 43 minutes late, that's a definitive answer, and you don't get anything. If it's 46 minutes late, that's a definitive answer, and that feeds into the smart contract, which will then pay you. It doesn't make a judgment. It just says 45 or more, then it gives you 10 times. And by the way, the 10 and the 25, these payoff ratios are determined actuarially based on previous information for this flight. So for any given flight, the ratios may be different. But here's the cool thing. You don't have to be on the flight. They don't know who you are. They don't know their customer. You don't register, and there's no account. You can just bet. You could even just bet that it's not going to land, and you can shoot the plane down, and the thing will pay off. I don't recommend that, by the way. There are probably other consequences, but this is just a betting contract. That's all it is, and it will bet with anyone. Even the pilot can bet here. Okay, you don't have to register. There are no accounts on the blockchain. There are no accounts on the blockchain. There are no accounts. You don't register for anything. A 12-year-old can do the same thing as a 59-year-old on the blockchain. It doesn't know, and it doesn't care. So that's not so good for today's regulators and laws, and oh well, too bad, it's a new world. So that's a smart contract. It's going to execute on every one of these 10,000 computers no matter what happens. It will execute. You can't stop it. You can't sabotage it. This is called unstoppable computing. Once you start a smart contract, 10,000 computers would all have to stop for that smart contract to stop. And that's not going to happen because of the way the game is designed. So here's what you can do with a blockchain. This is it. You can store value. You can exchange value. You can store permanent records. And you can program. There's a programming language for several blockchains that lets you add business logic to all of the above. And that's it. That's what you can do with a blockchain. It turns out that with these 4 things, you can also create a bank or an insurance company or a brokerage house or almost any kind of financial institution you like. That's all they do. They just use people and legal language and lots of inefficiency to do it. Here we can just do it direct. So that's what a smart contract is. What is it? It's a program that executes on the blockchain no matter what, with inputs and outputs and payments as a result of the inputs and outputs. That's what a smart contract is, okay? It's not really a contract, but it's pretty darn close, technically, to a contract. People say they're not smart and they're not contracts. Okay, they're not smart, but they pretty much are contracts, mostly. So now I want to talk about tokens. Tokens you've probably heard of. Anybody have a token here? Anybody have a pillar token? That's my company. No, forget it, that's all right. So a coin is a general purpose fundamental unit of value in a system. And we know what a coin is because, we have them in our wallet. We use these things every day. They're just made up. It's just numbers. Here's the number, right? It's just made up, right? You can't take this anywhere and get anything. You can't take this to the Bank of England and get something for it. It's made up. It's just numbers that are made up and limited in supply. Does this ring a bell? This is what cryptocurrencies are, except cryptocurrencies are not money. Cryptocurrencies are basically a unit of exchange. So a coin is a general purpose unit of value in a system. So Bitcoin is the general purpose in the Bitcoin system, and Ether is the general purpose in the Ether. Whoops. I stopped. Can I start? No, now I'm in a bad mode again. All right. So Ether, okay. Ether is a general purpose unit of value, mostly used as a unit of exchange in a system. And there's a continuum from general purpose to special purpose. You can think of these things as poker chips in one case. A poker chip is something you give your money to the casino, and you can use it at all the games in the casino. You can't use it at the casino across the street. Only works at those games, but it works at a bunch of games, right? Or a single use. This is actually a train ticket I used in Slovakia a year and a half ago, and that was a single use time. It was only good for one seat on one train one time. So there's multiple use and single use, but it's always for a single system, and it's usually for a single purpose or a very narrow purpose. And one way to think of Bitcoin is to understand gold, okay? Gold has three uses: industrial, jewelry, and some kind of financial instrument, right? As a financial, it has a much bigger premium over, if nobody cared about the financial part of it, gold would be much less. Gold is worth something because people think it's money. That's kind of silly, but it's kind of historical, and there's some old reasons for that. It's not really true. But if you have a financial interest in gold, there are two possibilities. You are a long-term buyer holder because you believe in the value of gold for some silly reason. Okay, fine. Or you're a speculator, in which case you don't care. You just want to make money no matter which way it goes, right? So it's not too different from Bitcoin, because if you wanted to buy gold, you'd go get a brokerage account and you'd see some way to buy gold. It would say you could buy an ounce of gold for this much. And you would transfer your money on the screen, and then you would see on the screen that you have 1 ounce of gold or 2 ounces of gold or whatever it is. You'd see a number on the screen. That's it. You would not see the gold. You wouldn't have the gold. It wouldn't be in your pocket. It wouldn't be at home. That would be bad. It's just a number on the screen, right? And they make when the price of gold goes up, what happens? The miners go out and mine more gold, right, to bring it to market. In any 1 year, they can bring about a 1% increase to the amount of gold. When the price of gold goes down, what happens? They don't put gold back into the ground. They just don't mine. It doesn't make sense to mine, right? That's pretty much what we have in Bitcoin. It's just numbers on the screen. You don't have to know about the blocks and the chains and all the mechanics behind. It doesn't matter. It's just numbers on the screen. There's a limited supply of these things, and if the market wants more of these things, the price is going to go up. That's why you buy it if you're a speculator, and you might buy it as a hedge against inflation. If you didn't understand inflation, you'd buy it as a hedge against inflation. There's not going to be any inflation, so you don't need that. But if you wanted to buy it as a store of value, say to give to your children, that's not a bad idea, then you just buy it and you take your private key and you store it someplace like in a storage location off the internet. You don't want to have the private key on your phone or on your computer. You want to store it like on a USB stick in your garage or someplace where you know where it is, but bad guys don't. That's called cold storage because it's offline. It's not accessible to the internet. No hacker can get it. So that's what a coin is. What's a token? Well, we have lots of them, and they're in our wallet right now. Anytime you see a card stripe or a chip on a card, that's a token. We've been using these things for a long time. Whoops. I don't want that. Hold on. Oh, I see. There we go. All right, so the way tokens work, I remember I'm going up here, so, oh yeah. So the way tokens work, there are many, many kinds of these things. We've been using tokens for a long time, physical tokens, digital tokens. You're surrounded with them. You go to the gym. You open the door to your apartment. You know, you go into your building or something. You have this. This is a token. What is in here? What's in here that makes this work? a long random number. That's what's here, right? That's it. It's just a long random number. And it gets checked. Here's the long random number. Here's an example. Do I have my pointer? No. And it gets checked against a list. And so if your long random number is on that list, it gives you access to whatever you're supposed to be able to do with that token. If it's a hotel room, if it's your gym membership, if it's your door, your airplane ticket, whatever it is, it's just some long random number. And if it's on the list, you need a list. If it's on the list, then you have the benefit of that token at that time for whatever the deal is, right? So it's a randomly chosen large number. You need a private key because that's how you own it. Nobody else can get it. And it has to correspond to the number in a list. And then when you send that, which means you touch it, or you send from your phone or so, then you get the benefit of ownership. And there has to be a legal binding to the token. So if you put your code into a restaurant at the front and then you get a little token, well, there's actually a legal contract behind that says they owe you your code. So there's, this is advanced stuff that I'm not going to go over, but these are the basic kinds of tokens. And I'm going to stop here because we could go on for 5 more hours on all of these, diving into these, but we don't have 5 hours. I have what, Max? Max is not here. I might have 10 more minutes, so let me just stop here and see what the burning questions are and try to use the next 10 minutes well. No, that was all easy. Everybody got that. That was no problem. Yeah? Aren't you going to ask me if I should buy Ripple or something?
Could you explain some of the differences between the basic types of tokens?
Yeah, sure. So this is a token taxonomy. And some of the tokens are securities, as you can see, so they require an account. Government has to know who you are if they want. You might be a bad person doing some nefarious things, I guess. And then there are many other types. So these are the general purpose. Over here, one of the big categories is fiat coins, that are where you give £1,000 to my bank account, and I give you 1,000 pound tokens, and you can use those in the system. That's very useful because you can use them in smart contracts. You can transfer them easily. You don't have the banking system to run a pound. You can just transfer from person to person, and we have blockchains where that transfer is less than 1 cent. Even if it's 1 million pounds, it's 1 cent to make the transfer. That's what the blockchain costs to update the ledger on both sides. So that's very useful, and this will be transformative to have stablecoins. Unfortunately, there's a lot of banking laws and AML laws that say that we have to watch the network for suspicious activity, and we have to have e-money licenses and all this stuff that we don't really need, but they think we do because we're not grown up enough to use money, I guess, in this form. So we have regulations that make this very difficult. We're still doing it, but the regulations are unnecessary and are blocking progress. Then we have staking coins, which isn't so important, but we have asset tokens that represent, for example, your home. You could have an asset, you could have the token that represents a house in your wallet, which could be in your phone. My company, Pillar, we make a wallet, so it's on your phone. You can download it from the Apple Store or Google Play right now. It's called the Pillar Wallet, and you could have the token that represents your house in your wallet. And what does that mean? Well, it means you have the private key to that token. So with the correct legal constructs, it could be the ownership of your house. Now, if you own your house by owning a token, rather than having a bunch of paper that signatures and seals and wax and so forth, if you just used it as a token, I don't recommend losing the private key to your house, because then who would own it? Well, kind of nobody. So that would be bad. So we're actually working on building in fail-safe mechanisms and recovery mechanisms for this, because we know people do lose their private keys. So there's a lot of that going on, and tokenizing many assets is underway right now. Tokenizing real estate is happening in several countries. I have a new company called 2030, and we are tokenizing equity of companies. So you want to finance your company and sell stock to investors. The stock is a token, and we're in the middle of our test at the FCA right now. Soon we'll have our license, and we'll be the first company on the London Stock Exchange to be tokenized. But come back in 10 years, and I would hope most of them are tokenized. Tokens are a better way to own things than the silly digital ways we have right now, which amounts to databases and spreadsheets and can be corrupted, hacked, and so forth. This blockchain method is faster, cheaper, and better. So tokenizing financial assets is a big thing, and I'm working at the front of this industry to try to make tokenizing infrastructure that will replace the infrastructure today that we have for capital markets today. It's all new, and we're inventing it, and I hope in 10 years it'll be, the mainstream way we own things. We'll have to change our laws a bit because the laws are antiquated and they don't let us own directly many of the things we'd like to own, but we're working on that. We're working on policy, advocacy, educating lawmakers, and trying to get the legal framework to match a better, smarter, faster, cheaper infrastructure for owning things digitally. Then we have utility tokens, which is mostly like your gym membership card. It's what happened in the ICOs. Most ICOs sold an access token that gets you to use this particular system, a little bit like a poker chip. And then tickets are unlimited. They don't have scarcity. You can have as many as you want, so they can be fixed price. That's a big deal because fixed price things don't have volatile price. So you just make as many as you need. For example, for energy, for a kilowatt minute, that's what you want. You don't want the price of the token to fluctuate on the demand. You want a fixed price for the token, and then the price fluctuates in the market for energy, not the market for tokens. This is something I'm working on. Mostly we're working on that for financial products right now, tickets, and then skin in the game coins I don't have time for. How much time do I have now? About it? Couple minutes, yeah. So and then funds, obviously. We are tokenizing hedge funds and venture funds right now. That's happening. All that is regulated, more or less. And so it's kind of coming. It's the first about 18 months of tokenization of things. But I think we'll get, more and more momentum so that the real world is tied to our world. In our world, you own your own things. You have the private keys and no intermediary has the private keys. So this is a lot about disintermediation, where we're taking the middleman out of a lot of processes. And so if I can just go back quickly to this slide here, this is the summary. So what can you do with the blockchain? You can store value, you can exchange value person to person with no intermediaries, you can store permanent records, and you can execute programs. For further events in London, we're the Pillar Project. We're here in Shoreditch, and you can come to pillarproject.io and sign up for our newsletter. We have events almost every month, certainly at least every month, I think. And we have one coming up with Geek Girls on blockchain in about 3 weeks. It should be really fun. Any one or two last questions? Yes?
I mean, for me, tokenization is the key innovation. Blockchain is just a technology to enable it. Could you elaborate on that? Because
well, smart contracts are a pretty big deal. No? I mean, look what I just showed with insurance. It's actually happening, right? So, yeah. Tokenization is a big thing because it allows direct ownership, and we can trade directly. But we could build a marketplace where we can find each other and trade directly with no middlemen at all. It's a big deal. But there's many other things. With smart contract would let us run most government services without any people, just as software, trustable software. For example, tax. If we had a smart taxation system, which we don't, but if we did, we could run that through smart contracts, and every time you buy something, the tax would just be taken out. It'd just be all automatic. You never pay your taxes. There would be no tax day, no watching anything. Just happens in real time. So that's a pretty big deal. Quick one, anybody? Yes?
Out of all the ICO's companies' white papers you've read and seen, what has been your favorite use of blockchain technology?
I think we're still in infrastructure mode. We're still building infrastructure. So any of the infrastructure projects that are connecting blockchains or next generation blockchains or things for various kinds of compliance, I think we've seen a bunch of cute little end user things for gambling or for insurance, for little experiments. That's all nice. But I'd say this year is still the year of building the rails. That's what we're working on a lot. But of course, there are a bunch of fantastic projects that have shipped some products, not too many. We've shipped our product. No other particular big ones come to mind, but there are a number of really interesting ones. Okay, thank you very much.